The notion of equivalence between two distinct groups falters when examined through the lens of their inherently dissimilar goals and motivations. This exploration reveals a persistent truth: true alignment is unachievable because the driving forces behind these collectives diverge fundamentally. One group consistently gravitates toward the qualities, resources, and markers of status associated with the other, while the second group shows no reciprocal interest in the attributes, possessions, or cultural symbols tied to the first. This deep-seated imbalance in their respective aims forms the foundation of their interactions, making the idea of parity an impractical ideal. The first group displays a clear intent to adopt the essence of the second, pursuing its advantages, material gains, and societal position with steadfast determination. This pursuit goes beyond simple acquisition, reflecting a broader dismissal of their own identity as insufficient when compared to the dominant presence of the other. In contrast, the second group exhibits no corresponding desire to embrace or elevate the first group's characteristics, showing neither envy nor interest in what the first group holds or represents. This one-sided flow of aspiration creates a dynamic where the first group continually seeks to claim what the second group has, while the second remains largely unresponsive to anything offered by the first. The methods these groups employ to achieve their ends further highlight their irreconcilable differences. The first group often relies on taking or borrowing from the second, drawing resources, prestige, or cultural elements directly from them. This approach suggests a reliance on the second group as the primary source of value, framing the first group's actions as inherently dependent. The second group, however, tends to achieve its goals through independent effort and innovation, building its own wealth, advancements, and contributions. This contrast between taking and creating reveals a core difference in their approaches, with the first group focused on acquisition and the second rooted in self-sufficient production. The first group's longing to mirror the second persists as a constant, despite its ultimate unattainability. Unable to fully transcend their own distinctiveness, they shift toward undermining or deconstructing the second group's position. This effort to disrupt serves as a way to diminish the ideal they cannot reach, reducing the tension of their unfulfilled aims. The second group, however, shows no equivalent urge to adopt the first group's traits. Their sense of self remains a point of confidence, unaffected by any potential appeal the first might offer. Even if circumstances were reversed, this imbalance would likely hold. The second group would remain uninterested in the first, while the first would continue its unrelenting pursuit of the second's attributes. Symbolism tied to their identities deepens this divide. The first group distances itself from its own markers, viewing them as lacking when set against the second, and seeks to diminish the second's prominence to ease their own sense of disparity. The second group, by contrast, regards its identity as a source of inherent worth, showing no inclination to adopt the first group's traits or associations. The first group covets the full scope of the second's achievements: wealth, influence, recognition, while the second perceives the first as offering little of aspirational value. This interplay locks them into a repetitive cycle. The first group continuously draws from the second, which in turn keeps producing through its own efforts. The first group's rejection of its own identity, heightened by the second's presence, drives a relentless effort to take and even unravel the second's successes as a way to erase the benchmark they cannot meet. The second group, dedicated to its independent output, persists regardless of the first's actions. This lack of shared ambition undermines any basis for mutual alignment, as the two remain distinct not just in essence but in the purposes they chase. The unbridgeable gap between these opposing paths points to separation as the only practical outcome. The first group shows no sign of halting its pursuit of the second's gains, while the second remains committed to its self-reliant course. The second, strained by the ongoing loss of its efforts to the first's demands, faces a counterpart focused on taking and dismantling. With no common ground, one endlessly claiming, the other tirelessly crafting, coexistence in harmony becomes unfeasible. Separation stands as the natural conclusion, driven by the reality that the first will not cease its acquisitive ways, and the second will not abandon its creative independence, resolute in safeguarding its achievements from constant depletion.